Okay, let's now see some example right away. The first one. All right, the first one here, let's talk about primitive arguments. What's going to happen? Let's visualize exactly what's going to happen. You can see here, we have, let's now see. So this is where we declare or define the method, right? setRadius. And this is where we actually try to use the method, right? So you can see the different context over here, right? Of course, this is a caller or application. And this is the callee or definition. And we said that R over here is the parameter. And we say that the arg over here, well, the name is actually quite informative, but sometimes it may not be. So this one is the arguments. All right, let's see exactly how it's going to work. The circle class is very familiar to you, so we did that earlier, so I'm not going to repeat the detail. So if you try to create a circle object over here, so that means C is now going to point to an object of type circle, right? That's what's going to happen. And so it's going to be circle. Every circle has an attribute value called radius. Okay, that's the assumption. Okay, when we first create this circle objects, the radius is going to be 0. Okay. And the second line over here, we are creating an integer primitive type variable called arg. Okay, so let me put it here. Okay, and then arg is going to store the value 10. All right, and then we are calling this method over here c dot setRadius. And following the principle I just explained to you, that means we're going to do certain assignments. Param is assigned to arg, right? That's exactly what we're going to do. So what's gonna turn out to be is, so when we try to handle these arguments passed indirectly into integer r, so what's going to happen is r is assigned to arg, right? This is really important to know. So this is what's behind the scene. So what's going to happen is behind the scene, we're simply going to create this parameter variable r, and it's going to be assigned the value of arg, which will be 10. Okay, so far so good. So we are not using the imprecise, just simply cross out the r, every occurrence of r, just by arg. That might work in simple cases, but I would say now that you know about the principle for call by value, that should be the way you think about things from now on. Especially when we talk about polymorphic arguments in the context of inheritance, this will be the most effective way of reasoning about your program. But we'll get there later. But for now, just get used to the new way of tracing the program. Okay, so after we assign arguments into the parameter, so that's what we have. So now how can you execute this line over here? So when we have this radius is assigned to r. So what's this? Well, this is easy. We can do the replacement as usual. So this C is the context objects. So this will be replaced by C. So C dot radius is assigned to r. What's the value of r? You can see it's exactly 10. Oh, let me use this consistent color. It's actually 10. So that means this is going to be replaced by 10. All right, so that's call by value for primitive value. It's not difficult. Okay, but you need to know, especially this line over here, right? That's the crucial bits about how to visualize the call by value. So this part here. Okay, let's now take a look at the other case where the argument is actually of reference type. Let's see how it is going to work. In this case, we're simply passing some primitive value to set the radius. We can pass a circle, meaning that more precisely, we're passing a reference of some circle as the argument. Let's see how that's going to work. Okay, so very similar setup. We still have the same circle class, but now we have the setRadius some overloaded version. Right, so this week I'm not providing any source code to you. So any code example I talk about on iPad or on the slides, you will be expected to actually try it out yourself. I think that'll be the best for your learning. If you got trouble getting any of the example to compile or to run the way I illustrated, you can reach out to me. I'll be happy to help. But you should really try it yourself. Okay, I'm just trying to show you how to do fishing rather than just give you the fish. Okay, setRadius over here. rather than taking just an integer as the previous example, we're now going to take a reference type circle, right? Notice the difference. Again, just for clarity, this is where we declare or define the method, okay? And this is where we actually use or apply the method. Over here, right? You'll see the different color over here, okay? And let's now visualize line by line. We're first of all going to create circle C, okay? Similar as before. So C is going to point to a circle over here whose radius will simply got a default value of 0. So that'll be circle, okay? And then has a radius attributes, and default value will simply just be 0, okay? And then we got another argument over here, which is just another circle object, as opposed to just a primitive value over here, right? As opposed to before. Just make some comparison and contrast with the previous case of primitive type. Okay, so how do we visualize this? Well, just create another object. So arguments arg, right? So let me visualize that here. You know what? Let me put this one over here, if I may. And then let's now visualize arc. So arc is just another circle object, the same type, meaning that the same structure. So circle. And then that one also got radius attributes. And what should be its value? It should be set to be 10 in this case, right? Assuming that constructor will just do that accordingly. So 10. Okay, let me just write a little bit better. 10. Okay. And let's see this line over here. Let me highlight it. How do we do C dot set radius arc over here? Okay. You can see this argument over here is of type, is reference type, right? So this is reference type arguments. But we follow the same principle for call by value, meaning that you can see here we got circle C. So this is the parameter, right? So how do we do that? If you want to do call by value, so it's going to go the same principle over here, okay? So this will be the process for call by value, which will proceed as follows. It's going to do C, the parameter, is assigned to arc, the arguments. This is what's going to happen. It's so crucial for you to understand just this single variable assignment for exactly the same order, right? C is assigned to arc rather than arc is assigned to C. Just notice that the order is so crucial. Okay, so after this, how can we continue? Well, let's visualize that. What does it really mean when you say C is assigned to arc? Well, we have done this visualization many times. That's how you create how you create some alias for the same objects. So we're going to copy the address of arc and copy that into C, right? So arc. So which arrow are we changing? Well, it should be the targets for the assignment, right? So what's going to happen is for C, rather than pointing to, one thing I want to note. Okay, I almost confused myself. Almost. You can see we got C over here, right? We also got C over here. Even though they happen to be of the same name, but they're in different scope, right? Us as humans, we might just get easily confused, but for the Java compiler, it's not going to get confused. You can think about implicitly, there will be some hidden construct that will actually that will help the Java compiler disambiguate. You can think about this C over here is really from the circle user. Specifically, the circle user may be the main method. For example, let's say this fragment of code is actually from the main method, right? And on the other hand, this C over here is from a completely different scope. Let's write it down. It's going to be the C over here, the same name. However, it actually comes from the circle class and specifically the setRadius method. So that's something that can also help you visualize. So here I'm going to say it's actually come from the circle.setRadius context. Right? That's something I almost got myself confused, which is normal, but you don't want to get yourself confused. All right, let's continue. So when we say here C.arc, we're not talking about changing this C. we're talking about changing this C over here in the context of circle.setRadius, right? So what should we do? What we should do is C is now going to point to wherever arc is pointing to, which is over here. All right, so this is done by call by value. Simply copy the value of the arguments into the parameter. All right, and then we're going to do the final line over here. Let me use a different color. What's going to be the final line? The final line, let me use purple. The final line over here is going to say this dot radius. What's this? This is a context object. So this is going to be replaced by C. C dot radius, well, the C, of course, in this context over here is talking about this C, right? The blue one. Let me just use a color here. So C, and then so this will be C, right? So when we say C dot radius is assigned to C dot radius, right? C dot, what's this C? This C is this C over here. Dot radius, which will be 10. So what's going to happen is we're going to replace this value over here from 0 to 10. Again, I think I deliberately chose the variable name over here to be C, and also the parameter name over here to be C, between two different classes. I think that's quite realistic. You can never assume like all the variables, even in different scope, simply got distinct names. That's not realistic to assume. So I think in this case, you've got to know which context of the class or methods you're referring to the variable C. Either here, or either over here. Right? You got 2C over here. Okay, so that's about the call by value for the reference type. It's quite a bit of discussion over here, but I really want to make sure you are thorough. We are thorough going through the definition and some simple example.